My name is Simone Keene, and I'm the business manager at the Canadian Academy. Members Lounge 2022 is presented by Canadian Media Producers Association, which represents hundreds of Canada's independent producers. They are the people who make the shows and movies you love. Members Lounge 2022 is also made possible with support of our programming partners, Directors Guild of Canada and Ontario, William F. White International, Bell Fund, Le Funds Bell, Boat Rocker, NABET 700-M Unifor, Telefilm Canada, la Banque Nationale, le Bureau du Cinéma et de la Télévision du Québec, the Independent Production Fund, Panavision, and La Sodec. If you have any questions for today's speakers, please put them in the Q&A below, and we'll have some time for those at the end of the session. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. Aisha Fairclough is a filmmaker and producer with over 15 years of experience developing and producing factual lifestyle documentary content for several networks, and was most recently series producer on One Queen, Five Queers. Her short film, Body Politics, premiered at Hot Docs and screened at the Calgary International Film Festival and the St. John's Women's Film Festival, among others. Annalise McConaughey Howard has series produced hundreds of episodes of unscripted television. She has over 12 years of experience in development and production on shows that have aired on HGTV Canada and US, YTV, Food Network Canada, OWN, Animal Planet, TVO, and more. She currently is the showrunner of Island of Bryan, which is Canada's #1 specialty series. Kathy James oversees proper television development and content creation, executive producing and show running a number of original and international formats, including MasterChef Canada, The Great Canadian Baking Show, Mary Makes It Easy. Prior to joining Proper, Kathy was part of the team at the CBC Factual Entertainment that oversaw Dragon's Den and Battle of the Blades. Dora Fong is an award-winning production executive, showrunner, and director with hundreds of hours of unscripted programming credits to her name, from true crime to real estate renos, working alongside some of Canada's brightest talents, including Drew and Jonathan Scott on Property Brothers and Courtney Wilson's on Making It Home. And I'll pass it off to our moderator for today's session, Margot Daly. Margot is an award-winning senior unscripted producer, director, story editor, and former production executive with more than 25 years of experience in factual and lifestyle television. Her recent credits include series producing Underground Railroad: The Secret History for Discovery Canada, and as the lead story editor for the CBC doc series Enslaved. Welcome all.
Thank you so much, Simone. And I am so excited to spend the next 45 minutes talking to this talented panel of producers, and we're going to dive right in. So I'm going to address the COVID elephant in the room. And Kathy, you're the first person I want to speak to. So the last 2 years, creating TV, creating unfactual content with COVID, wow. I want to hear firsthand from you, knowing that you produced the Great Canadian Baking Show, among others, during this time. Talk to me about perhaps the biggest challenges of trying to create content, and if there were learnings that came out of that or things that are going to continue after that. I'd love to hear how COVID has impacted what you do.
We were actually the first unscripted company, I think, out of the gate to go into production with MasterChef Canada. And we did that, I think, in the beginning of July. So we really were like, feeling our way around, pioneering, at least I think we were, protocols that I think were quite new then, and that was scary and interesting, but it was a challenge that the team rose to. And I think everybody here has been through similar scenarios where your production team is in zones and you're masked, you're getting swabbed every morning. We did not, luckily and fortunately, have any shutdowns due to COVID, but there's always that danger. protecting your talent, knowing that if they go down, the whole thing goes down and hundreds of thousands of dollars are on the line. I mean, even the costs of just doing all this extra protocol around COVID cost, I think, an average of 20%. It added 20% more to production costs around across the board, is what I'm hearing. So it was an incredibly challenging period. During that time, we were very lucky. We had this window where we did the Great Canadian Baking Show. We did a show for Netflix. In terms of learning, I think that for reality producers, we always really need to really grasp the reality of the situation that we're dealing with. And we, in all the shows that we did, we sort of tried to embrace in some way what the audience was going through in these times. I think in the Great Canadian Baking Show, we sort of made a nod to it and allowed viewers to just really escape into the beautiful cakes and pastries of it all. But with Motel Makeover, these were two female entrepreneurs in their mid-30s who had taken on an incredible financial risk to open a motel. We're sort of in the final stages when COVID hit. So, at the end of the day, it was a better series, strangely, because of that, because the dramatic impact of that on them created a better story. So I think that, the learnings are that in this field, we can pivot, we can take opportunity from the hardship and the challenges. And I also think that, there was a point during the pandemic where I think that we all looked inward. There was a lot of things happening in the world and a lot of, and I'm sure we're going to deal with that later in the conversation. And I think that it gave us all an opportunity to look at ourselves and how we could do what we're doing better.
Fantastic. And for Annalise, I know you were actually outside of the country, which must have been another layer of challenge to produce your show in the midst of what was going on.
That's right. Yes. I mean, so Brian and Sarah Baumler opened up the hotel in Bahamas, I think 8 weeks before the world shut down. So that kind of became our theme of season 3. There was no choice but to play it. And yeah, of course, travel logistics, it was very complicated. Obviously, we're dealing with a local population as well. So unfortunately, it kind of, we had to bubble up and we couldn't film with some people that we wanted to, that was really tricky. But ultimately, that was the story. It was, as Kathy said, kind of the stakes. And, it was not evergreen. We played it and it was kind of the theme of the season.
Fantastic. And Dora, I have to finish with you on this portion of it because, expectations must have shifted, deliveries, all the things as producers, you were probably finding new ways to work and deliver because viewership was probably up and the demands didn't stop.
Absolutely, Margot. I think just from a producer network relationship, I think there's as we've learned through the pandemic, there's a lot of working together and finding solutions together. No one's sort of left holding the bag. We shifted air dates. We shifted, deadlines, understanding that what everybody was going through as well. On the viewership side, though, it did go up, at the start of the pandemic because we, unfortunately had a captive audience. A lot of people were home. And I think, over the last 2 years, some of that spike has evened out. However, I would say that viewership patterns have changed. Not significantly where it is a brand new playground, but I would say that there is more, more daytime viewing than we had previously. It's not always primetime viewing that gets the most numbers. It is sometimes, especially for HGTV shows in the daytime, because I guess that's something that people keep on in the background. So there's a lot of shifting pieces, but overall, viewership was up, and certainly our streaming platforms like SAC TV also rose, had higher numbers during that time and found its audience during that start of that pandemic, and hopefully is here to stay.
Fantastic, thank you. And so I want to bring Aisha into the conversation because another important thing that happened during this time, following the death of George Floyd, the subsequent Black Lives Matter protests, the world, we were really focusing on questions about race and representation and belonging, and that impacted our industry as well. And I'd love to hear from you about the importance of taking these things head on and how that affects you as a producer doing a show, but also as a producer seeking work. Talk to me about the importance of that representation focus.
That's a big question. Very, a difficult time in our industry, but a time that was needed. Black Death went viral, and we have to sit with that. Black Death went viral and changes had to be made. For those of us in the industry, we are aware of many of the issues, some of the systemic barriers that have always been plagued by our industry. But this was a time when we had to sit with what has happened and to reassess how we are doing our work. Thinking about who is in the room and who is not in the room, and how can we help and elevate those people whose voices have been silent. I can tell you, it was a difficult time. I've had conversations with people that I've wanted to have my entire career. And I had access to them because of listening calls, because of just random emails I got where I was like, oh my goodness, I exist now? Thank goodness. I've been around for a bit, but I've been here fighting with all of you. It was life-changing for me, to be honest, to be able to have conversations with change makers and have them being actively listening. I think the only way for things to change is to have difficult conversations. They are not easy. They are not easy. They might cause tears, they might cause anger, but the only way for us to change things are to have conversations. We all know the stats. We know that the representation of BIPOC people, especially in Unscripted, is quite frankly abysmal. During one of our calls, I had told a story about how I was on set with two Black, a PA camera guy, never saw them again. And this was over 10 years ago. Up to now, still haven't seen them. I'm happy to see that there are changes that have been made. They're starting to be made. There have to be more conversations. In hiring, it has to be intentional. I think as TV producers, sometimes we underestimate the power of our voices. We underestimate the content that we're putting out into the world. It is so important. We actually have the ability to change how people see themselves. Representation matters. When you see yourself, it changes the world. So who we cast, who makes stories has to be intentional. And I think that's what I want everybody to stay with, that we really do have the power to change the narrative. And no matter whether you're making a food show, whether you're making a home reno show, whether you're making a science show, crime, whatever you want to call it, dating, having hosts that reflect who are in the world are so important. Having size diversity is so important. Listening, finding talent. There are so many resources for talent, whether it be BIPOC film and TV, Access Real World, Oya Media Group, Array. So many sources that have come to the forefront over the last couple of years are so important. And it's also about nurturing talent, looking in different places. I've often heard, oh, I can't find a BIPOC director. We are here. Take a look. You just have to take the time and you have to do the research and invest and be intentional. I think this is an interesting time. This is an important time where we can make small changes. Again, some of the conversations I've had in the last 2 years have changed my life. They have literally changed my life. And I want us to continue to have these conversations. We're slowly returning to the office, but I want us to still have these conversations, whether they are uncomfortable or not, but they are necessary in order for things to really change.
Thank you, Aisha. An important subject. And actually, I know, Dora, this resonates for you too, as a proud immigrant, as you've described yourself, and also that representation at all levels, not just in front of the camera, behind. Dora, did you have anything to add your insights? And we're going to keep going, but I wanted to hear from you and allow you to share anything.
I think Aisha shared it so eloquently. So all I have to say, it's sort of echoing very similar sentiments is that, as a broadcaster and also, as a former producer, really, everything Aisha said is, absolutely correct. It's investing into future generations too. I think historically we're so used to grabbing someone's done great work for us. So we go back to that same pool. But as I said, sort of intentionally opening up that pool and forward planning. What is the next generation coming up? How can we invest in fresh faces now and give them the mentoring, give them the training so that they can have a path into senior, management positions in leadership positions. I would just say as a broadcaster, we're always looking for multitude of voices, not just behind the scenes, but also, on camera as well, because representation matters. And, I just want to specify that it's not always about having, one show that is the BIPOC representation. I've sort of been harping on this, is that it's important that it's not one because they can't be the standard bearer. They can't be the only representative. It's in the plurality of many voices, and many different Black voices, many different Asian voices, and that the multitude of representation means that you can have the gamut of experience, and that it is not, this is the one person that represents that culture. So that's really, our goal is to always look for more voices, more volume of voices, and so that it's the representation is more in depth, more meaningful, and not just performative.
Thank you. So important. We're going to shift gears, but thank you both, because I think this is the time to have these conversations, and we are starting to see changes in our industry. But I want to switch gears because we have lots of ground to cover. And Kathy, I want to bring it back to you. When I think of proper, I'd historically always thought formats, food. However, I want to hear from you. If formats are still the mainstay of what you do as a production company, if that's where it is. I know you have originals. And if so, and on top of that, I'd love to hear about the recipes for success when it comes to formats, because just because you purchased a hit that was a show that was a hit in another country doesn't necessarily mean it's going to hit here in Canada. So I'd love to get your take on formats and your strategy overall.
Yeah, sure. I feel like when you win, because sometimes you have to compete with other production companies or handed a format, it really is an extraordinary gift. And I think, and you're right, Margot, that it's not a surefire recipe for a hit, but it really helps. And, there's a reason that this is what broadcasters have sometimes gravitated toward, because television is all about, especially in this landscape, is about breaking through. And when you have a strong brand like Drag Race or MasterChef or, Iron Chef, Canada's Got Talent, these things are going to garner a lot of audience attention. And at Proper, we're known for our formats because the shows that we have made that have been the most successful have been formats. It's actually not something we spend a lot of time pursuing at all in development. We are much more engaged in creating originals, and we have done many originals, arguably as many formats, but people don't know them as well because they really haven't been as big hits. And we're hoping that we can sort of change the game on that. That's part of our goal at Proper, and I probably for everybody who's working in this field of unscripted, and is that you create a format or a show like Annalise has, which breaks through on a massive scale. And we want to do that. We've had incredible success with Mary Berg's her 2 cooking shows, with Motel Makeover. We have some other things coming out, and the Holy Grail is to actually make a format that has that extraordinary television DNA that you can, it will work in every territory. I mean, with something like Island of Bryan, it's very character driven. I don't know if you could do it other places with other extraordinary stars, But we're looking, ideally we'd be looking for something that is so powerful in its concept and in its core value that any territory that does it is going to experience the same success. And then, in terms of customizing formats, I think the key is to recognize what it is about them that is so appealing and don't mess with that. But it's easy, it's harder than just that. I think you have to customize it to your own country. And key to that is casting. You really want to have people that represent the country as a whole. And I think that, if you look at, MasterChef Canada, for example, I mean, part of the challenge we were up against was not only that we didn't have gazillions of dollars like the US production did, but we didn't have Gordon Ramsay. And at that point, there was still some question about, will this even work with Ramsay? Are people coming without Ramsay? Are people coming for Gordon Ramsay, or are they coming for the master chef of it all? And, we put together a group of people, Alvin Long, Michael Bonaccini, Claudio Aprile, very, very different than the US team, but they really resonated with Canadians. And then we had, our casting was very different from the US casting. First of all, it was a lot more diverse because, and what we were told in the US was that people, because it was a kind of a culture that didn't embrace immigrant and international food as readily as Canadians did. So in representing the kind of foods that Canadians liked, we just always, like, from the get-go had such we never even had to try to find different voices and backgrounds and cultures. Like, these were the people that came out to the auditions, and then they were the people that excelled, and they were the people that resonated with the audience. And it's really been the same with the Great Canadian Baking Show. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered all your questions, but
I think you did. No, certainly. So formats are definitely still an important part, but it's that duality of great originals, and then adapting those formats for us as Canadians. Fantastic.
absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Annalise, I've got to come back to you because food, you are the other side of that coin, home. We can't talk about Unscripted without that. And what I think is so fascinating, and Brian's been around, 15 plus years. He has had an evolution, kind of like the home genre. I remember the early days where it was DIY and how to focus. We have seen him and the show and the genre sort of graduate to the way that we tell these stories. And I'd love to get your insights because it sounds like it's not only big reveal type shows that you've been creating. You've been delving into story, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
That's right. I mean, we're certainly fortunate. We're spoiled to have Brian and obviously really amazing partners at Chorus who are willing to take a risk with us and all of that. But I think, again, we're so lucky to have Brian 4.5 years ago say, I think we're going to buy a hotel in Bahamas, and we were off from there. So the stakes were so high. And I think, there are obviously in the home and design space, design and build space, there are kind of the episodic formatted shows, and then the more serial, like docu-follow shows, which we've gotten into. And maybe there's kind of that move away from the heavily formatted series. And for the docu-follow approach, talent for sure is number one. Talent that they're taking, that these are real, authentic, big stories, and you're capturing it. And you want those, you want all of those elements, to be real, to be authentic. And as far as the build goes, if the build is kind of going into the background, or you're not revealing a space or a house or something every episode, you need to be really sure that all the other facets that you're mining for story are very rich, and I think that sometimes at the development stage, that's when some projects kind of miss the mark, or you realize, like, in the case of Brian and Sarah, we have this couple, they're 4 kids, all the 4 kids have different opinions. They live there. So there's the home component. They operate businesses. There's that. So there are just all these facets that you can draw on while the construction is happening. Yeah, it's about having enough content to sustain, 44 minutes or an hour and keep viewers coming back week to week. And then with any show, whether it's in the design or build realm or otherwise, I think you just need to be really clear on what you can truly offer the viewers. Is it expertise? Is it escapism, taking them to a place that they would never normally go?
Right.
Is it splashy reveals and really satisfying payoffs? Is it kind of like lean back programming? Or I'd say our show probably isn't lean back. There are some really tense moments, and that's true to who we work with and true to the story. So from the very early stages of development straight through on production, for everybody just to be clear on what you can offer the viewer and, shoot it that way. And another thing is, I think like docu-follow, people might think that it's like follow everything, fly on the wall. And I think it's like especially challenging in certain ways, that the more episodic formatted shows aren't. I think that, you really need to be dialed into what the story is at all times. I'm a huge proponent of starting post right when you start production so that you have eyes on everything. You're watching it, you're shaping the story as you go, because you never want to put yourself in a situation where you're like finding the story in post. I think that's really scary. So yeah, I think we're lucky, and we're certainly spoiled with this real story. And so many producers are just looking for that, the next big story, people who are taking risks, and just great people that can kind of take us along for the ride.
Perfect segue, Annalise. So Dora, I want to bring this back to you just in the sense of a great story isn't just found in post. There are a lot of elements, casting, development, but from the earliest stages, people are, I've got the next Brian, I've got the next great food show. They're coming to broadcasters to pitch, and it often starts there. So I'd love to get a sense from you, because there are pitfalls right at the beginning where you can sort of start to see this is where people are missing the mark to even get there. I'd love to get some insight from you about where you see producers going wrong and where they maybe are going right, whether it's HG or food. Yeah, I'd love that take on some of the areas that, our people watching us can take away as producers to pitch better.
I think that, the idea, maybe when I was coming up, there was sort of misnomer that, if you have to, in that sizzle, in that pitch, get it 100% correct. And that's definitely not the case, where people, and really what we're producing partners, because that's how we consider ourselves, is that, this is a journey we're going on together. What we want to see in those pitch and the sizzle is really the germ of an idea, or even great producers that maybe that talent is not right, or maybe that concept is not right, but we're very excited to see that, someone's really put great thought into a package, and they really, thought that out thoroughly, and it has that potential to be something. And maybe it's not what we're commissioning right now, but for sure, our development team will continue having those ongoing conversations with that producer to say, you know what, come back to us again when you've got something closer to this, or, we'll give feedback, as we're looking for something like this. Can you shape it this way? I love to think of the pitch and sizzle as the start of a conversation. And it's really just making sure the other end of that conversation is active and engaged, a little less than my cat, but engage conversation to what that is. I think some of the pitfalls comes from sometimes people putting in too much work in a pitch package and sizzle, and God forbid they spend so much money already on making that sizzle come together. And a sizzle is a great function for showing us talent, but it doesn't have to be overly produced. If you've got a great idea and it's time sensitive, just put something on an iPhone, put something, on a Zoom call, because we're all producers at heart, so we can see that potential. But I would say sending in a package that's just text without any video reference, even if it's just pulls of, old YouTube things, I think that's a dangerous proposition to go into, because we tend not to commission anything from just a pitch package that's on text. We want to see something. We want to see some potential of how a character lives, even if it's like a rip sizzle where you're just cobbling together other things, other shows, so that we have a proof of concept. That's what it is. It's, it's the start of a conversation of this is how we picture it together. And now let's start a more meaningful conversation. And that happens in us greenlighting development, right? That's the in-between step, is that it doesn't go to production. We greenlight money to go into development. That's where we will take the time to iron out together as a commissioning party and as producers what works, what doesn't work, what needs tweaking. So I think the key is to think of that pitch and sizzle as the start of a conversation, and to always bring some video of some kind. Doesn't have to be original, but show us something so that we can really sink our teeth into that idea.
100%. I have seen ideas go into greenlight development on great iPhone video of family. I've seen it firsthand. So I echo with what you're saying. We're going to be going into questions pretty soon. But Aisha, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Kathy started to talk about the importance of casting and development. And that's something you've been a casting director, and also with your show, One Queen, Five Queers, you mentioned to me there was some shaping of it from what it originally was. So talk to me about the importance of that development time to cast it, but also to take a concept and make it. You don't just go and start shooting and hope for the best. There's really something about that development stage.
Yeah, I think especially when you are revamping a show that was a hit in its time and it had several seasons. One Girl, Five Gays ran from, I believe it was 2009 to 2014. And remaking it for 2021 to be fresh and new and to be inclusive. We changed the host. Obviously, the host is Brooklyn Heights. It's also an executive producer. We also ensured that the cast was diverse. The original iteration of the show was wonderful for its time, but it left out so many voices. So it was so important in this iteration to include many stories. And when we wanted to include many stories, it wasn't just one, it wasn't a token. There's 8 episodes. Every episode had different diverse people that brought different lived experiences. We had Two-Spirit, non-binary, BIPOC, people of different religions, genders, sexualities, sharing their lived experience. And obviously, we wanted some of the shock value of the original series. We couldn't have it without that, but there was also nuanced conversations. We added new elements, a little cheeky part called Come Again. Cute name, but it also was about sharing stories of a family, depending on what the situation was. Quick shooter, fast hitting questions, fun, youthful questions, I should say. So the same spirit of the show, but ensuring that it was inclusive and vibrant and fresh and accessible. It was, I want to say 70% entertaining, 30% educational, so that people were coming out and learning. And really casting was quite key to it. Finding voices in the community. For the second season, we are casting around Canada, but because of COVID protections, restrictions, we could only cast with Ontario. I was really proud to say that on the show, the producers of the show were all queer. Many of them queer BIPOC voices, which was so central to telling the stories and putting together the questions. And a small knit community, so that we had it was truly inclusive. I was able to cast people that I've seen at clubs, that I know their story, I know their history. I think with casting is a wonderful thing when you can develop relationships. When you see when you see the star before their star rises, and it's about building that relationship, which was so important to me. I could go on and on. I know our time is limited, but really, building the relationships is so important. And finding the stars. I love that sometimes I get paid to be a nosy person. I'm so inquisitive. I know things that are happening way before everybody else, but it's about paying attention and giving voices the chance that haven't been heard before is what is key as well.
Thank you. we are definitely minutes away from going into question. I just want to do a quick fire round for everyone. I just love to hear what is exciting you in Unscripted. Short, we don't have a lot of time, but I just want to hear. It's a show, an aspect, a change. So Kathy, I'm going to start with you. I want to hear something that you're enjoying right now, exciting you.
Sorry, Margaret, do you mean like that I'm watching? Or that we're-
General. I mean, you know what I mean? Like as an Unscripted, what are you seeing a show that you like, or is there something? Is there a change? Give me something, or a show you're developing.
Well, you know, like I'm really excited about, you know, like what Aisha's done actually, and material like that, where we're seeing like a greater representation of people and amazing stories that I don't know that we would have seen 5 years ago. And I know that in our development process, we have 3 projects that you know, and you know, I wanted to say just something about casting. The other thing about casting with like you know, and again, when Aisha was saying about how you meet all these people, you form these networks, you find when you're doing these massive national castings, you find within those people you know, the potential for somebody to stand out and to really move ahead on their own path. Mary Berg was somebody like that from MasterChef Canada. And we recently launched a show on CBC Gem called Raffi Kat's Better Bake Along.
Oh,
And yeah, and Raffi Kat was the winner of season 5 of the Great Canadian Bake Off. Oh wait, season 4, I believe. I get confused because of COVID. She just had like the entire country fell in love with this woman, and her skill and ability are just beyond. So we created a show around her with Anne Cornell and Alan Shane Lewis, and I'm just really excited about that. And I do think that part of having that representation on the screen has to push us, like, to have all queer people working on your show, Aisha. We should similarly, and are trying to, if we have a BIPOC cast, we want to have the most BIPOC crew and team, writers supporting that cast, making sure that everything about them is represented authentically, right from the, you know, piece of paper where the idea is first sort of being worked out.
I'm going to jump in because we literally have a minute. Thank you, Kathy. I know you're excited. Listen, I asked for excitement. So everyone else, I just want a really short nugget from you. Is it something, a show you're loving? Annalise, give it to me. What are you excited about right now in our world?
Oh, I'm excited about telling some news stories. And I think, like, coming out of such a profoundly painful and difficult time in history, I think people are really connected to what's important, how they want to spend their time, what their dreams are, what they want to accomplish, you know, and with that, I think they'll be taking some great risks, and there's going to be amazing unscripted shows that come out of that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Dora, keep it short and sweet for me. What's
all right? A tone of empathy in not just in how we produce, but also in how we listen, how we watch as viewers, that our ears are sort of, and eyes are more open to, you know, new voices, new stories and new narratives, and that those uncomfortable conversations are open and in the forefront, and that we are eagerly listening and want to and seeking them out.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Aisha, this is you. Short and sweet. Give me your nugget.
All right, I will be quick. I am empathy, of course. I'm excited about quick second chances. You know, the world has changed. Their great resignation. People are changing their lives. People are quitting jobs, finding their voices, getting a chance to live again. I'm excited about stories. You know, when stories are better, so is the world. So I'm just excited for more voices to be included, not only in front, but behind. I'm excited.
Good. Thank you all. This was fun. Time just flew. We're moving into questions, so nobody go anywhere. I'm going to read the first one. And they are directed to individuals. And then we've gone exactly 14 minutes. So here we go. Aisha, could you speak to the value and importance of panel shows like One Queen, Five Queers in introducing Canadian personalities to a wider audiences? And let me just read this follow-up part. It seems panel shows are mainstays in the UK and Australia. Is a panel show wave growing in Canada? That's for you.
It's a panel show wave. Ooh, good question, making me think on the spot. You know, I think what's important with panels is obviously having a diversity of experience. There's too many times when we've watched shows and we're like, wow, this is all the same person. Can we get some varied experiences? I think with One Queen, Five Queers, what we're able to show is that it is possible to have a diverse cast that have different experiences. You know, we have queer people in the show that, you know, are more conservative in their values. We also had people in the show that are extremely, for lack of a better word, very liberal and open. But I think it's a time to just include many different voices, because no voice is the same. No voice is the same, whether it's a host, whether it is a panel, whether it's a dating show. It's just important that we can't tokenize voices and expect that because we have said person that they're going to come with this lived experience, that we have to just allow many voices until we're literally drowned out and we're like, oh my gosh, how many different people are there? Oh my goodness, is kind of what I look forward to seeing. I'm not sure if I answered your question. I probably didn't. Hopefully I've illuminated a little bit.
Thank you. Okay, I've got another question, and actually I'm going to throw this one to Dora from the network point of view. What are some exciting upcoming trends in Unscripted you are looking for? Maybe some of them are already on your development slate. I don't know, is there something new, Dora, that you are seeing or about to birth?
We are birthing new talent on HGTV, which is really, you know, where that is still primarily focused. You know, on my slate, where I think we're announcing it this afternoon, maybe just 15 minutes ago. Styled is you know, new pair of talents on HGTV. They're stagers, they are BIPOC, and it's a newer take for us. It's because we tend to do more you know, we tend to do more big renovations. These ones are very specific and pointed viewpoints to it. On the food side, we're looking for you know, primetime programming, big concepts that are really you know, they're sort of like event viewing. I think that's how we like to think of that. And we're, you know, frankly, we're looking for the, so while we're birthing some, we are hungry for those new voices, new talent, and big food concepts, especially food. I think we're always looking to make it more event viewing as opposed to like travelogue or instructional, because there's historically a lot of that. So I think we're really, we wanted to make it an engaging. Competition shows always do great, but we're always looking for the next twist on gameplay, etc.
Kathy, this is it for maybe for both of you? Oops, sorry, I'm on mute. Oh no, wait, there we go. Is food competition here to stay? I always wonder, is it a fad? Food competition, what's the thought? Kathy, you can
I mean, Dora might be more the authority, but like as someone who's pitching all over the place, like I definitely think it is. And you know, I've talked to many people at different networks about you know, deviating away from food competition, but it just seems to really work. And I think that you know, it's big, it's loud, as Dora says, if you can find ways to you know, introduce new and interesting gameplay, interesting twists and turns. It's hard because the bar is set really high, but I do think people love it. But I'm also I am also I feel inspired also by the fact that with streaming, there is room for other sort of tempos. And so instructional cooking, which I think was really, really tough to get off the ground. There's a niche for that now. I don't know that it's ever going to be a Food Network at 8. I don't think so. And I think that there's some really interesting travelogues. I think that the challenge with travelogues is, again, the bar is very high and you really need to have some breakthrough talent to get the eyeballs.
Fantastic, thanks.
And could I just add a thought there, Margot? Sorry, and then I think the competition space for food shows is not necessarily cutthroat. Like, it's not about, one person cutting down the other person. I think it's that striving for better and striving for success. So it's not that, like, the competition aspect is not necessarily that we want to see personalities against each other and cutting each other down.
100%. And I love that there's room for that whole gamut, because I think of Great Canadian Baking Show, it's a competition, but it's kinder, gentler. And so there's room. And to your point, Kathy, I also think I enjoy the personality that is teaching me. So, I guess on streamers, you can have that array. You've got competition, different styles of competition, but you can also have something that's a travel log or, classic how-to. So I think that's exciting.
I think that Dora makes an excellent point. I think that in exploring competition, there's the appetite for different moods and different approaches. And and I do want to remind you, Margot, that the competition on the Great Canadian Baking Show is pretty fierce for that cake plate. There is a cake.
Yeah, sorry, with the exception, no blood, but they want the crown. Very true, very true. All right, Annalise, I'm throwing this one at you, and you can see what you can do with this one. How and when do you identify your audience in the production process? So if I flip this to Island of Brian, you must know who your audience is by now. Are they coming to you for the island? Are they coming to you to learn how to fix their home? And who are they? Are they not, like, I don't know, maybe you can take that one, see what you can do with that.
I'm constantly surprised by our audience for Island of Brian. And part of that is just like who I hear from. I've made these shows, been doing home reno shows for 8 years straight. And then since IOB started, it's like everybody and their neighbor and their little kids are watching, and like little kids watch it on a certain level, and they like to see how the Baumler kids experience the island, and they think there's like, it's aspirational even for kids. And then so definitely co-viewing, and I think people watch on different levels. Certainly it's a slow burn. We thought that we started out with a 6-month renovation process, and now we're by the end of the season, we'll have 47 episodes. We're in our 4th year of production, so it's, I think, we do have beautiful reveals and beautiful design, but people, our audience, I think, is tuning in just for that access to the Baumler family, escapism to the island, and definitely like an aspirational element, leaving it all behind and going and taking on this big project. I think there's an aspirational element. So that's to say, I think it has a pretty far-reaching audience. It's not just like the 25 to 54.
It's actively something you're thinking about, and that audience, you're not just doing it and hoping. There's an element of being aware.
I actually love to think as an audience member too. Like sometimes when we're looking to mobilize things, like, if something falls through and we need to make a new plan, so we think like, I bet people want to know how the kitchen's doing right now, or you just kind of think, it's so fun to have that playground to think,
sure.
Like, what would I want to see as a viewer? And again, it all comes back to access.
Fantastic. I have one last question, and I'm going to throw it to everybody. And basically, it is an advice question. So, Aisha, you're first, and we'll go around. Give us your best, concise little thought. What advice do you have for producers looking to start producing unscripted content? and I'm taking it they're either not in Unscripted, they're in production, not, but they just, you know, are at the beginning. What nuggets? I'm going to ask everybody. So Aisha, what would you say? What would you
Ooh,
advise?
that is a good question. What advice do I have for producers that are embarking on a new show? My advice would be to, oh boy, pay attention to the audience, nurture your talent, and also be know that you can possibly change the concept that you originally wanted. Be open to change. Be open to change. Be open to criticism, but also at the same time, still fight for what you want. Fight for what you want. So an element of the show that you originally pitched is still there, but just be open to evolving.
That's great. Fantastic. Okay. Who did I just last? Kathy, your advice. What advice do you have for producers looking to start producing unscripted? Maybe they're doing a different genre and trying to segue in, or maybe they're just coming from, I'm a PA or I'm a story producer, now I want to pitch a show. What do you got?
You know, I really do feel that as the industry has become more successful, it's really difficult to move up the ladder, that people get really entrenched in certain parts of the industry, and it's hard to get to that next step. And I think my advice to people who want to be showrunners or directors or kind of come at it from, you know, a more senior creative position is that you've got to really kind of try to create the television that you really want to watch. Like, think about an idea that you are incredibly passionate about, and that you feel that you or the people involved in these ideas have a story that is unique, that you and they are best qualified to tell. And I think then pitch the hell out of that and get it the attention that it deserves. And I really do think that that might be, and I'd love to hear if anybody else has any other ideas, the way to sort of jump the queue, get attention, and start doing the kind of work that you really want to do.
Fantastic. Thank you. All good. Dora, what do you got? Best advice for producer looking to start producing?
Really, really lame, especially in this environment. I was like, truth is stranger than fiction. If you've got great source material, if you've got great talent, if you've got a great project that you can see, you know, in real life is happening and gains your interest, that's where to focus on. And I say that also to not try to invent something that's not there. You know, if you are at the development stage and you are racking your brain trying to, you know, come up with that storyline to fill an 8-episode arc, then maybe it's time to cut your losses and look elsewhere. Because, you know, if you're inventing all of these, you know, mechanisms that aren't really there and trying to create all this drama and jeopardy, then maybe it was never the right source material to begin with, be it a talent or a project.
Great.
Jump in again, because Dora, kind of, I think, you know, a no is a no from somebody who gets like 90% no's, and we're successful at pitching. You really do have to like not fight it if people don't want what you're selling. But I also wanted to add another thing, and maybe it's a bit self-serving, but if you are a young person or somebody who's relatively newer to the field and you don't feel you go in to talk to somebody at Chorus like Dora, you don't, and Dora, you're probably very welcoming, or you don't necessarily feel like you've got the wherewithal or the infrastructure, the money, the legal background, all the things that you do need, come to come to a qualified production company, because we are really interested in third-party ideas, and we'll make sure that you are well compensated and get opportunity from empowering us to help you make that idea.
Thank you. Annalise, if you've got 1 second, you can be the last word. We literally are at time. Is there a one short word piece of advice?
I'd say if you're already in the production trenches, identify the hardworking, humble people who are doing at the top of what they do, and see what you can take off of their plates, you know?
Wow. Okay, we made it right on the dot. First of all, I have to thank all of you. Such wonderful insight. I selfishly wanted to hear from all of you for my own knowledge. So thank you so much. I know Simone is going to come back to wrap things up, but it's been a pleasure chatting with all of you and hearing what you've had to share. So thank you. Simone, over.
Oh, here we go. I just wanted to echo what you were saying. I want to thank you, Aisha, Annalise, Kathy, Dora, and Margot for today's conversation. It was inspiring and enlightening. And thank you to our partners at Boat Rocker for presenting this session.